Hey there, Seahawks, it's Miss Adams, and in this video, we're going to look at bias in data collection. All right, so what is bias? Bias is the tendency of a statistic to underestimate or overestimate a parameter. Bias sampling methods include voluntary response sample, which is when the responses come from those who volunteer to provide feedback. For example, if it was like, hey, call in, like on a radio show, or write in, or something like that. The issues with a voluntary response sample is that only those with strong opinions take the time to answer. Another bias method is convenience sampling. So selecting individuals that are easiest to reach or contact. So students in this class period, friends or family, etc. The issues is that a lurking variable may be the reason for the result. So maybe if you only pick your friends, well, they're your friends because you are maybe like-minded. So they might pick the same thing as you would have picked. And if you had ventured out and gotten a simple random sample, you might get more of a variety. Response bias is anything in the survey design that influences responses. So some examples of response bias are leading or confusing questions or social desirability. So leading question is when the wording of the question may be loaded in some way to undeservedly favor one response over another. Okay, so it basically leads you, like you read the question or somebody asks you the question, and it's leading you to pick this one particular option. Social desirability is when often people want to present themselves in a good way and are reluctant to admit unsavory or illegal attitudes or activities in a survey. Non-response bias is bias introduced when a large amount of those chosen for the sample do not participate. So if you don't answer the phone, or you hang up, you don't mail back a questionnaire, or you just refuse to answer the questions, that would be non-response. Voluntary response bias is bias that occurs when sample members are self-selected and typically overrepresents people with very strong opinions, especially for controversial topics. So call into the radio show, an online survey. Undercoverage occurs when some members of the population are inadequately represented in the sample. Undercoverage is a very common problem with convenience samples. So if they make calls to landlines, then that's ignoring anybody who doesn't have a landline. All right, so you're leaving out a large group of people. All right, a practice. Emily has a YouTube channel, and she is curious to know how her viewers like her show. She includes a poll in her video. The poll shows 90% of the 150 respondents love her show. This is an example of A, response bias, B, undercoverage, or C, voluntary response bias. Okay, we are going to go with voluntary response bias. She's putting it out there. She includes a poll in her videos. So it's all the people who watch her channel already. So I'm not really leaving out, it's not undercoverage, I'm not leaving out a group because we're only concerned about the people that are already watching her channel. She's not leading them. There's no question wording that we know of that's leading them to say this. But probably the people that are going there and watching her videos feel very strongly about the content she's putting out there. So, and also they're self-selecting to participate or not to participate. So this is voluntary response bias. Another example, a high school wanted to know if its students smoked or vaped. When students visited the counselors to schedule classes, they asked every student in person if they smoke or vape. The data found 5% of students smoke or vape. This is an example of response bias, undercoverage, or voluntary response bias. All right, this would be response bias, probably because of that social desirability. there's probably more than 5% that smoke or vape, but if asked by a counselor, they might not want to be truthful because it might might not portray the image that they're trying to portray to the guidance counselors. All right, go Seahawks.